Hello everyone, I wanted to showcase my in-stacking wonder. I've seen a lot of questions about this on Reddit lately, and I think Kinetic Bolt of Fragmentation is getting a lot of coverage right now. Pelstrom just made an insane build using it on Deadeye, but I still think there's a lot of value in the Trickster version, mainly because the defenses are insane. The way we get these defenses all through int, so we get the damage from int, we get the defenses from int, which means every single piece you add, it has like more int on it than the last one, adds more defenses, adds more damage, which is all you need in a build. The other thing is that Trickster is really good at staying alive through the form of Overleech. Goes for us because we have high evasion and high ES, and frankly enough, one step ahead is amazing this league. I think a lot of the rares right now, especially if you do Wildwood Wisp farming, are scary. They're scary mobs right now. So making sure their action speed is never higher than 92% makes it so that the evasion, which makes you dodge every 1 in 20, or only get hit every 1 in 20 attacks, is very high value and makes it a build that is actually able to face tank, because that's what Kinetic Bolt of Fragmentation wants you to do. The other reason for going Trickster is the Overleech. I leash about 3k per second. I have 10% instant leech. So every hit with Kinetic Bolt, which I hit about 30 times with it, leeches a fair chunk of my ES, which means I'm basically never below max. And even if I do get hit, I'm back to full, like within the same frame. And it just makes the build feel incredible. So I'll showcase a quick formed invitation, and then I'll talk about some of my gear.
Die with some flair. Struggle or strangle.
So, gotta focus a little bit.
Twin terrors.
He's the only one that really hurts.
Time to
that
up
flame
the
blast can actually kill me
stakes.
sometimes.
A veil of safety
The rest
and
is fairly easy.
security.
I don't think Minotaurs even hurt me once,
Time to up the stakes.
like at all,
Tight tethers.
which is pretty
Dazzling
cool.
survival.
Okay, I want to go over my gear now. Most important piece is the wand. It adds flat damage and increased damage per intelligence. So again, we are scaling everything from intelligence. Next most important piece is the amulet. It adds increased intelligence, flat intelligence. The other mods aren't necessarily important. The most important things are actually resistances. It is pretty hard to cap resistances in this build. And then the actual most important thing on the amulet is tranquility, which increases the energy shield, which again, all of our int applies to our energy shield. It makes those increases to energy shield apply to spell damage, and spell damage applies at a very high value to Kinetic Bolt of Fragmentation. So this is a very efficient way of scaling damage, and I can show you. I have 180,000, and now it is half that. So just from tranquility alone, I scale a lot of damage. A helmet is very cheap. Just get a high ES helmet with some int on it and whatever resistances you need to fill out. Belt, same thing. Just craft it yourself with some essences and good synth base. Shouldn't be very expensive. Shield is somewhat expensive depending if you want a 6 split or not. If you hit 20% curse effect, which I have a 19% shield and a 3% charm. If you hit 20% curse effect, a level 21 sniper's mark will go from 5 splits into 6 splits. The next interesting piece for my build is my gloves, which are fairly expensive to craft. Like a fractured suppress base is expensive. The other way of solving this though is dropping some of my charms with strength and int for charms with suppress chance. It is worse for strength and worse for int, obviously, but it solves all the stuff these very expensive gloves solve for me. So that's a way to cut down the cost even more. The next important item is the Syntrax. The reason we go for Syntrax is because you can find them really cheaply with a +1 socket to Gems Corrupt. This +1 socket to Gems Corrupt makes our Enlighten 3 go from 3 to 4. A level 4 Enlighten is very expensive at the moment. This cuts down on the cost significantly and lets me run 3 50% auras and still have enough mana left to like spam the skill a few times and put a sniper's mark, etc. Okay, so now we're in POB. I wanted to quickly showcase the items again. Wand, shield, helmet, chest piece, gloves, boots, amulet, ring, second ring, belt. All of these pieces you can self-craft, like all the rares you can self-craft with just the Essences of Spite. It's pretty easy. It can be costly if you want to go for really nice items, but I would say just hit intelligence and whatever res you need, and that is a good enough place to start. You can always recraft items later for more ES. Flasks, most important ones are the Stipnite and the Jade. They help significantly with the evade chance. Okay, next my jewels. This cluster I have over here because I have 2 split personalities. This is not necessarily required for the build. If you want to save on points and not use splits but instead use different jewels, you can put it here and you save like 2 points. That way gets you the cluster a little bit earlier. Watcher's Eye. Damage penetrates resistance while affected by Wrath is the most and only important mod. I kept my suppress through Watcher's Eye, but again you can do this through charms or gear or tree, so there's like a lot of options to cap suppress. The most important bit for suppress is getting the replica Heres, because that 30% is pretty hard to replace. Over here we have that which was taken, which is for me just another strength and int. I found one with blind and that's the one I took. Everything else is unimportant, so it's just a 2 mod one, very cheap. Should be pretty easy to find something similar. I would recommend getting one source of blind. For me it is... Oh, I didn't even have it on. But for me it's the last 2% of evasion. So that helps a lot. The other thing you could do if you do a different boot setup and you can't reserve 3 50% ones is you reserve Dread Banner instead, which will make evading stuff even easier because of the less accuracy rating. So that's another option for reservation right there. Yeah, the charms, I'll go over them really quickly because one of them is pretty important in the version that I'm running. I have a curse effect one, which is fairly important if you want to cap out on a 20% curse effect for the sniper's mark and you don't have a 20% shield, which is like obviously way more expensive than any other role. This one is actually the most important one though. The 15% chance to get a power charge on crit is our only way of getting power charges in this build. We don't have enough power charges to use power charge on crit support. It's not worth it. Like we only have 5 and getting to this one is not worth it in my opinion with the way my tree is set up. So we get power charges on kill, but on single target the only way to get them is on crit. Normally we get it from here, which has 10% power charge on crit with wands, but because we're not using the unique helmet that adds spell damage to attacks, we have to use increases and reductions for spell damage applied to attacks for the sake of kinetic blast only. So if you want to just play Kinetic Bolt, you don't need this and you can instead get power charge on crit here, but for my version it has to be that way. Okay, next I want to go over my notes really quickly. Just some leveling tips. Level 21 Wrath Corrupted Implicit Ring will fix all the flat damage you kind of need for leveling. Kinetic Bolt of Fragmentation is just a busted skill. Make sure you use 1 Pierce, Returning Projectile Support and Sniper's Mark self-casted, because Mark on hit gives you less curse effect, which means less splits. And this should be enough to clear the game. Like I did everything on just these items, like on a 4-link, and it was fine. Then some crafting tips for the most important pieces. Craft a wand really quickly because I feel like a lot of people are going to buy them for way too much money. And you can actually craft something like this for under 100 C, and you can craft what is essentially bis for like 5 div if you get lucky on trying to craft this one. So the way you do this is you get an imbued shaper wand, eye level 85 preferably. You make sure it's rare, you perfect fossil it until it's either 24% or 30% quality. I wouldn't worry about going for 30, anything over 24 is nice. The reason you go for that is because every 8% quality adds 1% attack speed. Once you've perfect fossiled it, you scour it, you transmute, you alt spam until you hit 1 damage or 1 to 6 lightning damage per 10 intelligence. Then this one is essentially done. You do the same thing with an Elder Wand. The Elder Wand can be any base type, any item level, I think as long as it's higher than level 68. And then you woke orb them together and then you get either something like this or you get something that is not like this and you're going to have to fix it. How to fix it I've outlined in the POB notes. It is very, very easy to craft wands like this, and if you get lucky and you hit an open prefix or if you go for the YOLO and all and you hit an open prefix, and you have an open suffix, you can craft a wand that is worth like quite a lot of money for not quite a lot of money. So good luck with that. It's really easy and actually kind of fun. Some other notes in my POB go over don't overskill int, because it's actually really easy to assume just because we're an int stacker, having 2k int is better than having 1600 int. But to get to 2k int, you need to give up so much other stuff that it's most likely not worth it. Like for me, with 1600 int, if I add 200 flat to my config, I get about 15% more damage. If I just get a better wand with a 15% Alipen mod, I get the same amount of damage. So there's a lot of ways to scale this build. Don't get stuck on just scaling int. Anything over 1500 is a very good place to be. And after that, I wouldn't really worry about getting more. Curse effect, 20%, went over this. Leech, just some explaining how to calculate the damage, which in POB is really easy to do. You have your main skill, which you set to count 5, including full DPS. You copy the whole skill over with Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, right? You get another one. So in this other one, you take off volatility. Volatility adds about 60% more damage, I think. That's actually not entirely true, but it's pretty close, just for an estimation. Then you add the number of projectiles you would get from the split. So I have 5 base projectiles. Every projectile splits 6 times, meaning I have 30 projectiles. So my upper DPS limit is about 30 mil, but it's probably a little bit lower. So between 20 and 30 mil DPS is a pretty good estimate of what you're getting. Okay, so to recap really quickly. Int, skills ES, skills evasion, skills increase damage, skills flat damage, skills the entire fucking build. Is very efficient and not very pricey. All the items, especially the wand, are very easy to make yourself. You should be able to play this version that I have for like 25 divs or less. If you just don't worry about the spell suppression, you could probably do it for like 10 to 15. It is a very fun build, very fast build, very strong build, and an insanely tanky build. For this price point, I doubt you can find better in softcore. Not sure if it's a hardcore build, by the way, because it is an evasion build, so there's a chance you just get one tapped by a high fizz hit. I think I have like a 12k max fizz, which is not very high. And that's kind of it. It's an awesome build. Go play.